They've finally done it. Lian Li have finally made an MATX version of their O11 Vision. This is in partnership with PCMR, and well, I fooled you. It's actually an empty box. I just couldn't help myself. I had to take a sneak peek before building. It's down there, along with a bunch of 3D printed goodies that I'm super excited to show you. So we've built in a couple of PCMR collab cases in the past, both from Lian Li, and we've tried to be different with how we approach this PC builds, especially the most recent one with the black and yellow color scheme that PCMR is known for. Now, what I really love about the O11 Vision-M, apart from the fact that it looks absolutely gorgeous, is the fact that it hardly compromises in the way of hardware support. So you typically lose mounting support up top when you have a tempered glass panel on the roof. But Lian Li has solved that problem by shifting the 360 support for like a top radiator mount to the back. So the rear section of this dual chamber design behind the motherboard tray actually supports a 360mm AIO. Combine that with this large upper cover, you could call it a basement, I suppose, but it's not really for a power supply. And we've actually fitted an optional display as well. It's gonna be really cool to customize later. And that means that you can fully hide your tubes with the exception of what's gonna poke right above the CPU socket for an ultra clean look. Doing things this way also keeps air for the graphics card isolated from the radiator for the CPU, which means that if your card is running super hot and warming the air in this section of the chassis, it shouldn't in theory affect very much the air that flows around the backside of the motherboard for the CPU. This is truly what a dual chamber chassis is all about. Combine that with more 360mm support down below and optional 240 support along the motherboard tray, and you've got a recipe for one airflowy design. But for this build, I want to try something different. Since we already have a proper dual chamber setup, I don't want air crossing over this section where I'd normally place fans. So what I've done is 3D printed a PLA panel and ironed it out, and it's just gonna sit right there. And it's actually going to completely section off the two different airflow paths. So one for the graphics card through fresh air along the bottom, and then the other behind the motherboard tray brought in by fresh air through this 140mm fan for the CPU. No air in theory should cross between these two chambers with this seal in place. I actually think that's gonna help us in the long run. To be clear, I haven't fully thought this methodology through. I think it makes sense on paper, but it may not change temperatures much at all. At least it'll look cool. Now, in terms of other 3D printed goodies, I designed this PCMR logo, which is a multicolor print. It's pretty thin, so it's not resource heavy. I couldn't find the exact same font though, which I believe is Roboto. This is like Sans or something, but I wanna place it right there. I think that's a pretty cool use of that empty space next to the LCD. So yeah, that's a good start. Also made this fully spelled out PC Master Race logo, and this actually has an adapted 120mm bracket. So we're gonna put this in the center lower fan in the case, and then you can see how the logo will stand upright from there, centered. I think that's gonna look pretty cool. Behind that, we have this, this I didn't design. This was found in Bamboo Labs' online model section, but I scaled it up a bit and I changed the colors. It actually would be functional at its normal size with switches, so you could turn it like a fidget toy or something like that. But I figured this would be a cool use of empty space next to the motherboard. I also found these 120mm louvers online. I'm not sure what the purpose of these would be other than just to look cool, because functionally they're kind of gonna disturb airflow, right? But I'm not mounting fans at the rear of this case, so I've got two of these to put at the back. For the left and front tempered glass panels, I designed these very basic circuit board tracers, more or less, just a bunch of circles and lines together. I figured this would look cool on the glass to sort of break up the otherwise plain look up front. And I printed and ironed these in black just so they'd sort of blend in a bit with the black chassis, but you can see there's an example of roughly where one would go. I think that looks pretty cool. And of course, we can't forget about custom sleeve cables. These are of course black and yellow. They're not quite the same yellow as the PLA that I printed with, but I think in most lighting situations, you won't be able to see the difference, especially with all the panels installed. There is a lot here, and I haven't even shown you the proper hardware going into this chassis. I'll save that for right after this. I hope you'll stay with me.
Are you sitting on a gaming PC without an activated copy of Windows? Forget $100+ retail keys. Instead, snag an OEM Windows 11 key for a fraction of the price to unlock the full potential of the OS. Oh, and don't worry, they'll still remove those pesky activation watermarks. Just click the links below to get started today, and be sure to use our special offer code SKGS for a sweet discount on a variety of options, including Windows 11 Pro, Home, and more.
Now, last time I checked, PCMR was for all builds. It's not about elitism. It's not about spending more money than your friend. It's not about bragging over and over about how you have a 5080 and your friend only has a 4060. All builds are welcome to PCMR, and that's why I'm making an effort to actually not build the most expensive thing possible. We're gonna be using some premium hardware, but the core of the platform is not going to be all that pricey, and that's just to show you that, well, you don't need to spend thousands of dollars to get a healthy gaming experience. So we're kicking things off with an MSI P650M and a Ryzen 7 7700. This combo is not super expensive, and you know what? That's all right. We'll just gently open the socket and lower her on in, minding the orientation of the golden triangle. Then we can latch it back down. That sounded worse than it was. Now, no matter how you slice it in mid-2026, RAM and storage prices are going to be a bit insane. So we've gone with a pretty simple kit, 32 gigs of DDR5s, this Kingston Fury Beast memory. Doesn't even have LEDs, right? None of that stuff, no bling. It's just a pretty bare bones kit. And that's really all we can afford for this one. We've also got a 1 terabyte NVMe. It's probably not enough for modern gaming unless you're sticking with just like a few titles, but we could always scale this up later. We'll throw them into slots A2 and B2 as the board requests. And as for our M.2 drive, it slots in under this slab of metal here. Unfortunately, not totally toolless, but what can you expect from a cheaper board? At least the M.2 mechanism itself is toolless. That's nice. Also, let's maybe not forget to remove this plastic, and back down she goes. Just one more thing to tackle platform side before the merge with our case. This is the Hydro Shift OLED Curve from Lian Li. It is an absolute beast of a 360mm AIO with, again, a beautiful screen that also moves pretty dynamically. We'll show you that later. This is definitely overkill for a 7700. I think Lian Li was expecting us to pair this with a higher end CPU, but this goes back to what I said about balance. Some of this is going to be just an aesthetic play. Other bits of it are just going to be about budget performance. So yeah, maybe don't copy this verbatim. If you're going to buy a really expensive AIO like this, pair it with a higher end CPU. And you know, to be honest, a vast majority of the builds I've seen so far online featuring the Vision-M have been extremely high end. I don't always like to follow the crowd. You know, you can throw cheaper hardware into a case like this that feels premium, and that case can actually elevate said hardware. It can make it look more expensive than it is. And that's what I just like being able to show off different hardware combinations than what you might find from the average builder. So there's our AIO mounting hardware pre-installed, pretty easy, just a couple of brackets to tighten down with the original Phillips screws. And with our rear IO shield installed, we can gently lower in our assembled platform. She's all buttoned down, looking good. I always like to pause here and admire the sheer beauty of simplicity, just a platform and a chassis, super clean. Now it's time to tackle some basic wiring. We've got unified front panel here, which is nice. USB for our screen and HD audio to the bottom left. USB 3 right here. Oh, come on. Oh, this is too much force. And USB-C just above it. I'm actually gonna remove this included 140. I think our build will do just fine with 6 fans in total. This should free up additional room for our AIO. And for that, we'll need to remove this top panel. So again, here you get a true sense of what this dual chamber layout is all about, and I think properly done in this case. You can see the motherboard tray is recessed quite a bit, but then Lian Li have opened up space further up for that 360mm, and again, it's all isolated by this channel running down the center. You got plenty more space on the left side again for a 360 down below and wider graphics cards without compromising much in the way of CPU cooling up here, and again, the second compartment. 4 Phillips screws later, and this upper 360mm mount, actually 5, make that 5 Phillips screws later. I'm not reading the manuals, I'm just kind of winging it. You gotta pull that one off as well, and this 360mm mount should pop off. My, oh my, check out this beauty. So when you hear the phrase Hydro Shift from Lian Li, what that's referring to is their method for concealing tube runs. So they've actually got these tubes running along the side of the radiator here, along with an accompanying bracket. That way you only see a sliver of tubing running to the CPU block. So that keeps everything super clean. You only see fans, partially a radiator, and of course the CPU block. These tubes aren't going to be stretching in front of your motherboard or around your graphics card or anything, which can be a nuisance. So if you're wondering where the OLED display is, that is still in the box. You can see it attaches totally toolless via these contact pins, which is very convenient. But all this, of course, comes at a steep cost, around $300. The white one's, I think, a little more expensive as of time of filming. That is a tough pill to swallow, and probably not up most budget builders' alleys. You could find sub $100 360mm AIOs that get the job done for a 7700. So again, this is purely an aesthetic play. I just want to see this thing in action. An OLED curved panel that moves on its own, that sounds pretty dope. And now, from what I've seen, this should be a pretty tight fit. Not sure how much clearance we're gonna have, if any. I don't even know if I'm doing this right. I feel like I'm not. That's how tight this is. Maybe I should come at it like straight down from above. No, but then I've got clearance issues with the tubes. This is just a serious pain. I've been at this for probably 30 minutes now trying to figure this out. Surely these have to work with each other, right? Because Lian Li sent both of them at the same time. But it's not as simple as you might think.
12 o'clock midnight.
Well, it's installed, but it didn't go in very easily. I had to look this up because I thought I was going crazy. Apparently there is a way to get this to slide into the case. You just have to remove a couple of plastic panels that come pre-installed on the radiator and around the tube inserts. I went that far, but I didn't admittedly try it again after removing those pieces with the tubes on this side, closer to the rear exhaust fan. That seems to be the only way to get this to work natively. I managed to swap the orientation of the tube exits, so now they come out the right side instead of closer toward the motherboard tray. These tube exits are also staggered coming from the radiator, which made my orientation, my solution, a bit less practical. So don't do what I did, just to take off a couple pieces of plastic and call it a day if you're building with this combination. Oh, what a headache. The only thing we need to do on the AIO side is install the block, and we can't forget thermal paste. We also can't forget the plastic shield on the cold plate. There we go. Temperatures would be pretty devastating with that still on. Only thing I noticed that I'm slightly worried about, you have to slide the block in from the rear IO side forward, and that's to make sure that the block is properly lined up and that it's seated flush with the IHS before it's tightened down. The problem is if you do that and you push down at the same time, then you're gonna smear a lot of that thermal paste toward one direction, which is not ideal. So I tightened these two a bit more first in hopes that I could push some of that thermal paste back, but there's just not a lot of clearance there. I like the idea. I just wish there was a bit more height to play with. Gotta say though, I really like the clean look of this install. You got very minimal tube exposure and it just wraps so beautifully behind this shroud. So I think on that front, great job, Lian Li. And pretty much all that's left on this front is installing the screen, which is totally toolless thanks to the magnets and again, those contact pins. This is gonna be super rewarding. You can see it already swivels a bit when we apply some pressure. This is all motorized, so that's gonna be cool to see later. But that peel, whew, and OLED at that, this is nicer than some folks' gaming monitors, and it's inside of a chassis. Go ahead and get these 3D printed louvers installed next, and these should bolt up with the original fan screws. Yep, so they're about 4 millimeters wide, each of these screw holes, and that allows these screws to thread perfectly into them. Even with PLA, these tap nicely, and yeah, that holds up nice. We've got PC cases with muscle-style louvers before GTA 6. One of these years. And now we can install our 3D printed cover, which should snug up about right there. I think that's where we want it. I'm just using some 3M double-sided tape to keep it there. Nothing fancy, no screws or anything. But as you can see, that looks pretty good. Almost like Lian Li intended it to be this way. And you can see it has like a cool metallic sheen to it, so it plays well with the light and blends in with the rest of the chassis. Next is our PCMR logo. I'm gonna be very careful with this one because I want it as centered as possible from the edge of the screen to the opposite side. I think that looks pretty good there for just eyeballing it. Followed closely thereafter by our gaming keys. Now this, I wanna make sure I get right. I was thinking about maybe doing it diagonal or a little crooked just intentionally, but I think upright looks a bit cleaner. So I'm gonna try to get this nice and flush. Oh, whoopsie. I think that there, nope, it's a little crooked. Yeah, that looks good. So there you go, PCMR logo up top, and then WASD keys down below. And from far back, I think that looks pretty cohesive. Really liking the little bit of yellow that we sprinkled in so far. Also, before I forget, let's go ahead and peel this screen's plastic. Ooh la la. And now it's graphics card time. This is an oldie but goodie, an XFX RX 6750 XT. I've used this a few times in the past. It's been collecting dust in the closet. I feel like putting it to good use again. This is gonna make for a pretty sweet combo. Maybe a bit bottlenecked on the GPU side, but you could always upgrade this later. This comes with a healthy 12 gig frame buffer. I'd say still relevant for modern 1080p and even some 1440p gaming. And with 2 slot covers removed, it'll rest right about here. Oh yeah, that is a cool looking setup. Let's tighten down and have a look at her. Yep, this table is an absolute mess, but I'm really liking what I'm seeing so far. Also love the fact that the Vision-M has an integrated graphics card support bracket. As you can see, our 6750 XT is perfectly horizontal. The only thing I'm debating at this point is whether I even want the lower PC Master Race logo in here. See, it's gonna sit upright about 25-ish millimeters, because again, we're gonna have fans that it's gonna mount to below this, but it does block the graphics card a little bit, and honestly, the card looks pretty good as is. Nah, I think I'm gonna scrap it. I have something better in mind. I'll show it to you later. For now though, let's get our 3 lower fans installed. This bracket should come out just a couple of Phillips screws removed. I think. It should, there we go. Yep. I think I'm actually gonna use the same Noctua fans we did for the previous PCMR build, only this time I'm gonna stick with the black accents. The yellow ones are just a bit too bright. In fact, I have one of them right here. You can see, I mean, it's yellow, but it's a super bright yellow, and it's not really my cup of tea, not for this build where the yellow is a bit darker, the actual PCMR yellow. So we are going to stick with black, neutral black here. It should look pretty stealthy. And wow, would you look at that? That is a pretty slim pickings. I'd say it's about 15 to 20 millimeters worth of clearance with these 120s installed. So if you went with a proper 3-slot graphics card, you'd need some slim 120s, otherwise this setup will not work. Also, I just wanna show you what the logo would look like installed in here. I mean, I'd say that doesn't look too bad. I don't know. I'm still on the fence about it. I'm sure that half of you, at least, would probably say this doesn't look good here, but you know, it's hard to get a gauge of the internet's opinions before I actually publish things. So I'm just gonna roll without it. Remember, we're gonna have our 2 8-pin yellowish cables running from here. The problem is I was planning on running them under the card, but now that I see the clearance, maybe we don't go that route. What I will do for starters though is pre-install our 24-pin. This I know for sure is going, and also sorry if you see the camera wobble a bit, that's Cashew below me knocking on the tripod. He loves doing that. Alrighty, so that right there, let's keep things nice and tucked in if possible, just because I don't want any of this covering our 3D printed goodies. What do you think, buddy? Think it looks pretty good? I'd appreciate it if you didn't get your fur back there. I'm trying to keep things clean, thank you. Just apply a bit of tension with the zip tie on this side, and it's gonna look a bit weird back here, but you're not gonna see it. And on this side, ooh la la, would you look at that? An almost perfectly horizontal 24-pin. That's difficult to pull off without, again, using zip ties and things along the backside, or unless you have a really short run of these. So yeah, I'm happy with the way this one turned out. 8-pin APS is up next, and while I can't get this one perfectly vertical because of the way that this shroud cuts things off, I will say that this hint of yellow on this side of the chassis is looking pretty good. I was able to button up the supplemental PCIe 8 pins, somehow managed to pull that off. I also decided that the area of the chassis near the 8-pin EPS needed a bit more color, so I printed the unofficial mascot of PCMR, Mr. Glorious himself. This is not a big print, it is multicolor though, so it did take about 30 minutes. It came out pretty nice considering it wasn't very large, and I'm gonna put it right here. Yeah, I think that works well. Almost like the diagonal lines in this motherboard's rear I/O cover sort of like play into the hair in the wind effect, right? He's moving very quickly. I actually like the way it looks here quite a bit. And to round things out, for the tempered glass, those 2 circuit board tracers that we made, I'm gonna put one of them right here, and I'm just gonna use double-sided tape again. It will look a bit weird if you're seeing things from inside the case looking outward, because you can see again where this tape is going to be. But from the exterior, I think it looks quite nice. Again, we'll put the other one somewhere on the larger left side panel. The last thing to tackle hardware-wise was our power supply, and I went with a pretty budget option. This might not be your cup of tea. I wanted to save a bit of money here, and again, just sort of play into this like value-oriented build. Yes, some things are very expensive and really don't make sense with this combination of hardware, but other things we can sort of make up for on the back end. It's 700 watts, it's 80 plus bronze, it's non-modular, but it gets the job done. I also went back and made the controversial decision of including the PC Master Race billboard sign that we printed. I'm calling it a billboard, it's just much bigger than anything else. And I think it actually works. The way that I designed this, it's kind of loose, the tolerances, so you can see a bit of a line there, but I think it looks pretty clean. It's just a coincidence that this billboard is about as wide as our graphics card is, so it all kind of plays together nicely. It also covers up the questionable cable runs, supplemental PCIs in particular, that are squeezed between multiple fans. This sort of alleviates the stress visually. And as it turns out, Lian Li software ain't half bad. I was expecting way worse than this. I guess my expectations are pretty low nowadays because most software suites are absolute garbage. I usually resort to OpenRGB or Signal just for one suite to sort of unify everything. I was able to very easily set up our 9.2-inch display. This is the part where I thought it would be pretty finicky, but I could even set the color tones for different presets, which is really cool. Of course, I'm going with yellow, and I think that looks pretty good. And same goes for our AIO. Now this one, I didn't spend too much time trying to find something custom. I just went with what they had in their suite already. I downloaded like 2 gigs worth of stuff that they had on hand and chose this one here since it's pretty neutral, just black and white for the most part, and we can surround this entire thing with a nice yellow hue. Oh, and get a load of this AIO block movement. It is so cool being able to control this in software, so you don't have to manipulate anything with your hand if you don't want to. In fact, I recommend you don't, because you might burn these motors and gears out. The ability to both slide the screen up and down and also tilt it up to 45 degrees yields an extra clean look.
You know, I gotta be honest, I was not expecting this to look as clean as it does. And this isn't a reflection of my 3D printed stuff. I know this is not anything really to write home about. It does make the build unique, but I'm not an expert 3D printer by any means, so this could definitely use some cleaning. What really sets this apart, I think, are the AIO and the display up top. This just integrates so nicely with the chassis, the 9.2-inch display especially, and you can see how we've color coordinated. Just it really plays into the black and yellow aesthetic that we're after. Maybe a bit more yellow than some of you might like, but again, it's pretty dark, closer to the back of this chassis. And so I think it's a nice balance there when combined with our glorious mascot and the PCMR logo to its right.
And again, I know probably the most controversial part of this build is going to be the inclusion of our billboard, but when you look at it, especially from this perspective, I think it really does provide like a nice tucked in feel. These cables are pretty much hidden. You get just a glimpse of them up top, and it makes things look cleaner than they actually are. Because with this removed, you can actually see the way that these curve underneath the shroud, and it does get pretty close in a few places. The clearances are just, they're barely there. So this just, in my eyes, looks a little more together, and that's why I'm keeping it. The only thing that's maybe a little weird about this build is our set of louvers. I don't really know why I went with this. I think it looks cool. Like, I wasn't planning on putting fans here anyway, just so that we could see again more of the rear IO cover. I knew I was gonna put something there at some point, and so this just helps break up the monotony, but I like it. It's a change of pace, and I'm all for that. And I'll be honest, in the beginning, I wasn't totally sure what graphics card I'd go with. This one here is, well, I think it's designed nicely. The Kick logo, or Quick, however you say that, on the back plate does sort of break up the like edgy sort of lines, like the 90-degree angles and things. This kind of looks just slapped on, but I think that actually complements everything else here. It does look a little more gamified in this manner, and it does sort of like reduce the business casual feel that the rest of this rig has. For example, with our gaming keys, this is flat, right? Nice 90-degree angles, horizontal and vertical. So had this also been on the graphics card, it might have been a little too edgy. Same goes for the PCMR logo above. Now this definitely wasn't changing under any circumstance. I wanted this here. I felt like this was the perfect place for their official logo, minus the incorrect font. But this is also pretty squared off, again, pretty edgy. When I mean edgy, I just mean, yeah, a bunch of 90-degree angles, not like edgy as in, ooh, it's PG-13. So this looks nice again, and that's another reason why I wanted the gaming keys below to also be flat, just so it didn't look discombobulated. Everything else for the most part was pretty plug and play. I've only changed one other setting in this rig, and that was enabling DOCP, which of course you have to do. Running 2 DIMMs, 32 gigs in total, and for Ryzen, that really does matter. I haven't changed frequencies across the board though, well, other than memory. So CPU and GPU frequencies are stock. We've got a fresh Adrenalin driver installed for the 6750 XT. And I want to see how this combination fares in 3D Mark Time Spy. In fact, it's this test right here where I'm super curious if the 7700 is really going to pull away from our graphics card. Hey Cash, can you not walk in front of the camera, buddy? Hey, you know what? That's actually not too bad. So 13,603. Again, this is a DX12 synthetic, so it's not going to be indicative of all real-world gaming. But you can see our graphics score is just under 14,000. Our CPU score is a little less than that. This doesn't always suggest that the CPU will be the bottleneck, but I'm kind of surprised at how well the 6750 XT performed. And it turns out this rig scores better than 65% of all submitted results. And you have to remember, there are going to be some very bare-bones systems tested with the DX12 here. There will be some very high-end ones as well. So, you know, your 5080 builds, 5090 builds, those are going to eke out toward the upper echelon here. But you can see this is a very right-skewed curve. A majority of builds are actually weaker than this one. And I'd say that's a pretty sweet result. It's better than what I thought it would be, to be honest. It just goes to show that cards like these are still very relevant today, and you can find a lot of them for great prices online. On the used market via eBay, you can find these sold all day for under 300 bucks. And for a 12 gig card in 2026, I'd say that ain't half bad. Snag one for, call it $250 for a triple fan model like this one, and then combine it with a $600 or $700 platform. That's gonna be tough to do with DDR5, near impossible actually, if you're going with 32 gigs of RAM. I would say 16 gigs of DDR4 is the sweet spot for most budget-conscious builds today. It's just how it has to be. You can always upgrade that later, but a majority of games are not gonna be too sensitive with 16 gigs. It's not ideal today, but it will do. You know what though? Now that the system's fired up and the screens are on, I'm actually not liking these too much. These sort of just don't look good. I don't know, maybe it's the color. I think these possibly could work in like a white or a yellow,
but I just think black, it just blends in too much. It's almost distracting. And if I did the same thing on the left side panel with it all together, it would detract, I feel, from other things inside. So I'm going to remove this one and probably just leave it bare. There is somebody I want to show this to. We did the same thing in another PCMR build video, Mr. Pedro himself, the founder of PCMR. It's his opinion that matters above all else when it comes to PCMR builds. And so I just want to see what he thinks about this one. I think it looks better than our last build, so maybe we get some points there.
How's the picture? Is it okay? The lighting and stuff?
Yeah, it looks good. I mean, you're 16:9 and I'm 9:16, so it's just a sign of the times. Well, the last 2 times we've built in PCMR collab cases, I think both with Lian Li, I got your reaction live, like for the first time you seeing the build. Without further ado, be harsh with me, okay? Don't hold back. Here we go, 3, 2, 1.
Bro, you went all out on this. Damn, you clearly know what PCMR is all about, man. This is really, really cool.
So I was
trying to notice every single one.
Oh yeah, so I got the unofficial mascot back there. You know, I had to throw him in. I know you said this isn't the correct logo, or the correct font, I should say.
It's perfect.
So that's the one thing I'm pretty bummed about. I was using Tinkercad. They only had like 4 different fonts to choose from.
That looks so good.
Yeah, this one I'm really happy about. This one turned out really cool. And then just kind of tried to color coordinate, you know, the digital display, and then just a little black and yellow scheme here for the AIO.
The RGB, the yellow RGB for
So,
the
yeah.
Lian Li, the new cooler. That's
Yeah,
really
yeah, it's nice that they give you that little like you know, customization around it as well. So it's not just a screen, but you can accent it on top of that. But yeah, you know, I appreciate your candid take on this. Is there anything you would change?
There's only one thing I think could be better, and it's if you had painted your hair white, got this really large fan, and
just soaked it up, right? Give this guy a run for his money.
From like a 9.9 to a 10, because you got the hair. I don't have the hair, but you do.
This chassis
Really nice.
dude, it just works so well. I've always been a sucker for MATX cases. Like I just love the size, and they don't, you know, compromise a ton in the way of expandability depending on the hardware setup. So it's just a happy medium in my book, and this thing's beautiful at the same time. It also doesn't cost a ton of money either. What, it's around $100, right? Somewhere in that ballpark?
$69.99.
69, no way.
$69.99.
That
Without
is
the screen.
insane.
With the screen, it's like the digital edition. It's $129 with the screen, but $70 for a case that's really high quality. I think it's to compensate a bit for the sad situation that we're living on with concerns like RAM prices.
What do you mean? What's wrong with RAM prices?
Oh, nothing, man. Nothing. It's just quadrupled in a year. Apart from that.
Well, thanks again, Pedro. Thanks for
you,
swinging by for the video here, and yeah, again, fantastic job on this case. You guys knocked it out of the park.
Thank you for building in this case, brother. Love you guys.
Anytime. There you have it then, the verdict officially from Mr. PCMR himself. And no, I totally did not change shirts in between filming these last few clips. This was all filmed at the same time, on the same day. What are you talking about? Jokes aside, Pedro is probably, you know what, not even probably, he is my closest friend in this industry. It's not every day you come across somebody as real as Pedro. He tells you exactly how he feels, he doesn't sugarcoat it, and we also have a lot of very similar interests. So every time I get to catch up with him at a trade show, Computex, CES, it's just always a blast. I think it's so cool that he has the history of being the founder of PCMR, a subreddit that is still super hot to this day. I have had an absolute blast building in the O11 Vision-M from Lian Li. This case is just fantastic. It is designed very well. It's a proper dual chamber chassis. In my view, it's MATX supported, which means that it supports a form factor that honestly doesn't get a ton of love in this space. I'm all for that, and it doesn't break the bank. I think this collaboration with PCMR is perfect. Hey, what's up, Cash? He's been here like in and out all day, and his fur is just everywhere. You can tell it's the dead heat of summer because half of his fur's in my office on the floor. probably in this build as well. One other thing I've thoroughly enjoyed about many of our recent PC builds as well, the 3D printed gear. Now again, a lot of this stuff I'm just pulling from online, so shout out to all the creators who spend their time to create these models and then upload them for free. I think that is so cool. We were able to scale a few of them to fit in this build. Also took some time in Tinkercad to design a few of my own. Now, one of them we just outright took out, but the other, the unofficial PCMR mascot, that one I had a lot of fun building, and I can even include it in the description if you want the STL file. I'll probably link it to Dropbox or Google Drive if you want to download it yourself. I think the custom cable extensions with the yellow accents did definitely round things out as well, helped break up a lot of the darker components in this chassis, and all around just super happy with this one. And again, it's all gonna be linked in the description if you want to build something similar. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks for building with me.